So what we'll do in this part is look at three versions of the film Mela, all called the same thing, Mela, and Mela. There are other versions as well, but they're in different languages, a Pakistani version and a Malayalam version, and so on. I even found one called Mela and Coffee, but that had the cast of Friends in it. It was nothing to do with what I'm talking about. But this first Mela that we'll look at is the opening to Mela from 1948, and that's happening a year after the partition of India into Pakistan and India. Of course, it deals with that. I'll explain how. The second Mela is 1971, so it's the period of when Indira Gandhi has taken over from her father, first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. And so Nehruvian socialism is partly the topic, but moving on. And the third one was the year 2000, was less successful, but it's kind of like a sequence of nationalist and globalized India and the terror threat. So it belongs to the war on terror. No doubt under COVID, there needs to be a new Mela done, fourth one. We'll see if it hasn't already. Now, each film pretty much opens, if not necessarily at the very beginning of the film, somewhere near the start of the film, with a sequence at a Mela, which means festival, where there is a Ferris wheel. And I found lots of Indian films with Ferris wheels in and all sorts, from historical to romantic and to art films. But these three all, of course, repeating some of the formula, both in terms of songs and story, and the furniture of the story. So the furniture of a festival nearly always has a Ferris wheel. I mean, that's kind of incidental, but how I hang them together around these Ferris wheels is sort of arbitrary, but helpful, because the differences in the same story what needs to come out, right? Why are the different versions of Mela different in the ways they are different? 1948, 1971, and 2000. Now, in Mela 1948, it's national reconciliation after partition. Okay, we're first introduced to the singer. The music is by Nashaud, and the song sung by Muhammad Rafi, but the actor who's playing it is not the singer. And a world-weary or aged character, Mohan, has been sent out from prison after however many years, we don't know, but like it seems like 20 years. And he's wandering through the Mela past balloon sellers and a Ferris wheel of a particular kind. You'll see it's moved by a kind of Superman, and the stalls of a festival. Now, again, I don't know if the sound will work, so please be quick to tell me yes or no if the sound is working when I slide into this. It's not automatically starting. Media not found. Okay, so that means I will play it outside. That means the sound I don't need to turn off, but I do need to stop presenting and present a window. Bear with me a second while I get this sorted out. Won't be long. Just need to search Mela, I guess. Yeah. Put them all in a folder. Okay, Mela MP4s, 1948. All right, let this work, please.
जाओ अब तुम आजाद हो ये जिंदगी के मेले 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 दुनिया में कम न होंगे अफसोस हम न होंगे दुनिया में कम न होंगे अफसोस हम न होंगे ये जिंदगी के मेले ये जिंदगी के मेले एक दिन पड़ेगा जाना क्या वक्त क्या जमाना एक दिन पड़ेगा जाना क्या वक्त क्या जमाना कोई न साथ देगा सब कुछ यहीं रहेगा कोई न साथ देगा सब कुछ यहीं रहेगा जाएंगे हम अकेले ये जिंदगी के मेले दुनिया में कम न होंगे अफसोस हम न होंगे ये जिंदगी के मेले ये जिंदगी के मेले ये जिंदगी के मेले ये जिंदगी के मेले
He's returned to his childhood playground.
वही जिंदगी वही मरहले वही कारवां वही रास्ते मगर अपने अपने मुकाम पर कभी तुम नहीं कभी हम नहीं क्या हुए वो दिन
So let's just go through this a little bit quickly. I think I've got time. Here he's being released from jail, right? We got that. It's interesting. Then he's going to walk through this Mela, a festival. Now, festivals were both celebrations, fun and fair, playground, but also religious meetings usually, or political religious meetings and markets. The three combined. It was, and it's classic and still the case in India that you see these combinations, or shopping malls, of course, have taken over. But here are all the usual festival things. But the fantastic thing is that they're not electric Ferris wheels or merry-go-rounds, but still the two. This crowd coming down the hill are very interesting because it's sort of like, you see these white caps that the guy in the front's got? There's a Congress cap. So the crowd is like a Congress. The independence movement has just kicked out the British, right? Largely led by the Congress and these white cap, white cloth activists leading the people. But it's not that the crowd is particularly Hindu or Muslim, right? It's, I mean, beside the fake beards, which seem pretty obvious. It's a multi-denominational. It's India, okay. But the lyrics, this journey of life, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily have been read only as about the recent partition, but it's pretty profound. They say, in this journey of life, the song says, in this journey of life, it continues but some of us won't be there, right? And he's kind of looking around, who won't be there, who will be there. The song is going on. People are going around the circle of life, I suppose. That's the metaphor of the merry-go-round of life, right? And you have to go somebody. We have to go sometime. Now, it may be that this is just about life itself, but it might be about partition that's just happened. I do want to mention this superhero, this guy who's running from his own muscle power. He's running the Ferris wheel, right? It's just from human muscles that these things are spinning. He's a Superman, right? Making them go around. But anyway, the lyrics are, no one can help you. You have to leave everything behind. That may be about leaving the life on this mortal coil, going to the next realm or the next reincarnation and so on. But it also might be leaving Pakistan, coming to India. Leave everything behind and run, or go from India to Pakistan, right? Because partition cut whole communities in half, and millions of people moved from one side to the other across India, and of course there were conflict. No one can help you. Leave everything behind. Come. You have to go on alone. Okay. And in a way, that's what's happened to him. He gets to his childhood playground. And what's happened is that he was, well, yeah, we get into the same life, the same journey. He was on a path with one person. He was destined to be with that person. And you see, they flash back then to school. And here he is, as a youngster. I want to catch him on the fence. This is him as a youngster on the fence next to this girl, and together they were like destined to always be together. Okay. But what happens in the film, metaphorically in a way, they're India and Pakistan. She and he are about to be married, and in a storm at another festival, he is hit by a falling tree and then gets amnesia. And at the same time, somebody else is killed, and this guy with amnesia, an injury, is blamed for it, so he gets put in prison and detained. So he misses, he's late for he doesn't turn up for his wedding. The village is embarrassed by this. He hasn't turned up for the wedding, so the girl has to be married off. But luckily, one entrepreneurial, one enterprising villager points out, actually, who's a bit of a nasty guy, points out that this old man who's like 70 has 3 kids, and he's just lost his wife, and she's got to sacrifice for the nation and become his wife and care for these 3 kids that are not hers, right? So again, that's a bit like what happens in partition. Some kids were made orphans and had to be brought into other families and be cared for and so on. And now when Mohan is coming back, right here, he finds that, he finds that the girl is married off, and eventually she looked after the kids until they grew up. So she sent India on its way, and then she killed herself. She threw herself off the mountain, and he does the same. And this was controversial in India at the time. It was not, this film was popular, but it was not thought appropriate. It was depressing that there would be a film in which there were suicides at the end. That the result instead is not to go on, to continue, but is to kill yourself, to throw yourself out of the film. Sorry, out of life. Well, they throw themselves out of the film, it looks like. We can get into the whole politics of the guy who talks the village into accepting the woman being married off to this older guy, and how unhappy she was, and so I mean has his own problems because he wanted to have the girl and never got. Was always the rival of Mohan when they were young. But whatever, it's almost like the marriage, the ideal marriage of India and Pakistan can't go forward. And so there's this depressing end. After someone has done their duty, brought up the kids, so India can go forward, Pakistan can go forward, but the union cannot go forward. So this was much discussed and debated and controversial, and so on, but also a super popular film. I mean, I showed it some years ago in a film festival, a film class. I showed the whole film to my class, like 6 years ago, something in Taiwan. And there were some Indian exchange students there, and they hadn't heard of the film, but they spoke to their grandparents who remembered it well. So it was very popular film. Let me go back to my PowerPoint for a little second, and we'll look at that's Mela 1948. And Dilip Kumar, who was the star of that, and Nargis, they're the two superstars of Indian cinema. And Nargis was Mother India in another film. She was iconic, the #1 actress. Dilip Kumar was maybe #2, but still super famous and a pairing, and they are famous all over the world. In Mela in 1971, the actor and actress again, super famous. The song is by Burman and the singer Muhammad Rafi, but with Lata Mangeshkar, who sang nearly every hit song from the mid-60s to the mid-90s, or late 80s at least. And this song is early in the film, the one we're going to watch, and the dance in the sequence early in the film, and it establishes the relationship between the main actress Twinkle Kapadia and the main actor. You'll see who is again an amnesiac. He's gone to a festival, a Mela, and well, when he was young, he went to a festival and got a tattoo with his brother. But then on the way, the festival is disrupted by a storm. He's hit by a tree and loses his memory. And then he's brought up by a Muslim woman, but he's obviously a Hindu kid because he's wearing a Hindu pendant. So she brings him up Hindu, even in a Muslim household, and then sends him to university, like in Delhi or somewhere. And he goes to university and learns about modern Nehruvian farm technique, modernization, right? And then he's coming back to his old village to farm the family plot of land and use modern technique farming, like a good Nehruvian socialist Indian, right? And is introduced effectively in this song to the belle of the village, the daughter of the village, who's like the symbol of the village, not the symbol of the village, the pride of the village, the belle of the village, right? And so on. Okay, so Mela 71. It's a bit ear-shattering at the start, this one. So let's get it going. But you'll see the choreography of this sequence is fantastic, especially thinking about how in the film Bride and Prejudice, there's a kind of standoff between the men and the women in the song. They kind of fight in the song. something similar is going on here, but the woman is associated with the earth, but she's able to use her charms to fight back, or something like that. Let's go.
गोरी के हाथ में कैसे ये छल्ला, ऐसी हो किस्मत मेरी भी अल्लाह। गोरी के हाथ में जैसे ये छल्ला, ऐसी हो किस्मत मेरी भी अल्लाह।
छूने न दूंगी उंगली में बाबू, बन जाओ चाहे चांदी का छल्ला। छूने न दूंगी उंगली में बाबू, बन जाओ चाहे चांदी का छल्ला।
कोई लुटे कोई मर मिटे जग हो दीवाना, ओ मैं जो बनूं तेरा कहना।
मुझे बने गहना संवरना छोड़ दूं, मुझे तो सजाए तो दर्पण तोड़ दूं।
ओ ऐसा गुस्सा भैरे वल्ला, गोरी के हाथ में जैसे ये छल्ला, ऐसी हो किस्मत मेरी भी अल्लाह।
छूने न दूंगी उंगली में बाबू, बन जाओ चाहे चांदी का छल्ला।
Okay, so from the beginning of the song to the end, there's a transformation in the movie that's taken place. They don't know each other. She's playing hard to get and so on, but it's very obvious that they're going to get together. By the end of it, they're singing together in the chorus. And she's gone through this getting to know him through song. And the rest of the film is quite amazing, because this guy who's Hindu, but his name is Krishna, he's brought up in a Muslim household, but he's Hindu and he belongs to the village. He's lost his memory, so he doesn't know, like he's bought the land that's his own ancestral land, but he didn't know it. And he goes to farm it, city return, with a tractor. And the tractor is the symbol of Nehruvian socialism, right? In the 1970s. It was all the discourse, right? One tractor in every village, and we will develop India into green revolution, rice technology, production, and all of that. And this village land, particular land that really should belong to him, but he doesn't know that it's his heritage, is can't be farmed because the gangster, the gunda, the bandit who lives in the hills has sworn that no one can ever farm that land because of his lost brother. And they both have these tattoos, but they don't see the tattoos that they got at the Mela when they were kids. These two brothers, and they don't know that they're brothers. The gangster stops, threatens to shoot this new Kushanya if he farms the land. And with the girl that he's just met in the song, the belle of the village, they kind of triumph over that. But they plant and they care for the crop and they guard it during the night. And despite the gunda, the gangster living in the hills, they manage to bring the crop in, but it leads to a conflict. At another Mela, the gangsters come to smuggle, to deliver some stolen goods to the Kali temple. It turns out that this gangster isn't just a gangster, he's a kind of Robin Hood character, right? He steals from the rich and gives to the temple. And then he nearly gets caught while running away from the temple. He's saved by the Krisanya. And then when they come together in the final fight sequence, he recognizes him. He says, "Oh, you're the one who saved me from those people who are chasing him." And only after they then have to fight anyway, and he's mortally wounded, does his shirt get ripped, and the other brother sees the tattoo and puts it together that they've both got the same tattoo and they're brothers that had met at the earlier Mela. And so what's the message of the film here? Right, unlike the message of 1948, where the circle of life of the Ferris wheel is telling a story about how we should have had continuity between India and Pakistan and it couldn't end. Here, one gangster must die because the criminal way of going ahead and the old-fashioned way, because the village had sided with controlling the land, has to be is overcome by forgiving old differences and by the new alliance between the tractor and the village, right? The village girl, who's the symbol of everything that's traditional and good, and new science coming with new farm science, agricultural science coming with the tractor guy. That will now reunite the village on a new level, and the old ways, both the village panchayat, the government of the village that sits on the wrong side, and the gangsters have to, who actually are Robin Hood figures, they're not all bad, have to be superseded, right? And that's kind of the ideology of that film, which I can only confirm when we look at the third film in this sequence, which is also, surprise, surprise, called Mela. Meta. Don't mean meta. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. So here was number 2. Oh, it was plugged in. And Mela 2000. Okay, the music is now by Surinder Sodhi. He was famous at the time. Rup Kumar Rathod and Sonu Nungam were famous singers. The song now has a deeply nationalist introduction, right? But it is the introduction to the village again and to the main figures, except one difference. The main character, I'll show you him in the middle there, will die early on. Right at the very start of the film, he's kicked out of the film. It's almost as if they couldn't afford to keep him. But then the dance narration sets up the glory of the village as India. India on a global stage is traditional colors and dance and the village. But this village is then, straight after this sequence that we'll watch, is disrupted by an attack by bandits and Muslims. I won't show you that sequence, but First of all, let's show the nationalist ideology in the film. Let me see if it's plugged right in. Media not found. Okay, so stop sharing and share the top one. Okay. So Rupa is the female character who, this one in color, she's about to be married. No, she's not to be married yet. Her brother has returned to the village and says, you could be married to my army friend, and that'll be a really good match, but you'll have to leave the village, right? So that's upsetting for some in the village, but yeah, then he is about to be killed by the attack on the village. This is all in the first 5 minutes of the film. Okay, let's play.
कितनी खुशियां हमारे घर में। भगवान करे इन खुशियों को कभी कभी किसी की नजर न लगे। मंत्री जी नमस्कारम, स्वागतम सुस्वागतम। आइए सरकार आइए, आपके लिए हमने मेला लगाया है, हमारे गांव का मेला। आइए 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 सरकार आइए। अरे तालियां बजाओ, मंत्री जी आए हैं। आइए आइए सरकार आइए, आपके लिए मेला लगाया है, हमारे दिलों से हमने मेला लगाया है। सरकार आइए 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 आइए। अरे नाचो नाचो, तालियां बजाओ, नाचो नाचो नाचो। आइए सरकार आइए आइए आइए, हमारा सौभाग्य है कि आज हमारे
This guy arriving is like the local politician. Has to be looked after, but he's problematic. He's gonna get killed. Hear the Ferris wheel? The drum is the Indian flag.
देश कई में देश है एक, और उस देश का नाम है भारत। भारत 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 हमारा भारत, तुम्हारा भारत, प्यारा भारत, प्यारा भारत। भारत देश में गांव कई में गांव है एक, अपने गांव के लोग हैं नेक, लोगों के सीने में रहता है दिल, और दिल कहता है कहता है कहता है कहता है कहता है कहता है दिल।
क्या कहता है दिल राम जी?
La la la,
Okay. This sequence is short. Let me add another one, a longer version of the same. So this politician is like going to get shot after this. Let's go back to this sequence where in the Ferris wheel that Ram, his name is Ram, right? Classic, is pointing to, this is his heart, which is India, which he's passing on to the next generation. It's in his heart, and yet it's ephemeral. But he doesn't even need words to explain that this is the cycle of life. By now, this has been in so many films that people get it, right? Life is karmic wheel, right? And let's go a little bit further into this film by one without subtitles, though. So, but you'll get it. Because dancing, song, don't need the sub. So from the same scene.
एक बार आके चला जाता है मेला दिलों का आता है एक बार आके चला जाता है मेला दिलों का आता है एक बार आके चला जाता है आते हैं मुसाफिर जाते हैं मुसाफिर जाना ही है सबको क्यों आते हैं मुसाफिर मेला दिलों का आता है एक बार आके चला जाता है हंस ले गाले ये दिन मिलेंगे कल थोड़ी खुशियाँ है थोड़े से ये पल हंस ले गाले ये दिन मिलेंगे कल.
Okay, no, but the nationalism of this, the village is the nation is its hope, its girl, it's whatever, and this then gets attacked by, frankly, by bandits. They're always described as bandits, but they really look like Muslims, right? So it's in the era of the war on terror, and we can get into a bit of analysis of this. The story unfolds, okay? Two travelers, guys that are traveling about trying to make money, anyway, pick up with this girl who was to be taken off to marry Ram's army friend, but was kidnapped by the terrorists who came and killed the politician and killed Ram and kidnapped the girl, right? And this terrorist, we never really get to know them as a character, unlike the Robin Hood terrorist in Mela 71. They are just bad, global bad Muslim gangster. And the lowest of two working class guys who are struggling to make money. They dream of becoming MTV stars, but they're basically working on a truck. Come by, and when this girl escapes from the gangster, she hitches a ride with them, and recruit them to come and fight back. Why she thinks that these two will be the ones to help her fight back, I don't know. But anyway, they come and they take on the mission basically, and they fight. And their friendship is solid India stuff, and they eventually defeat the gangster, and the village is saved. All right. So we can identify and detail some of the tropes in the film. The sequence of the Ferris wheel, it always means the chakra of India, the circle, the scene-setting song, the key romantic story that drives each plot, which is setting a challenge for the hero. The main character roles are opposing figures who, for some reason, usually loss of memory, or and in the last one, it's just that they aren't part of the village. They're just grunt level workers that then get integrated into the village. It's a process of resolution, basically. Right? So Raja Dayaksa, remember the film theorists that I mentioned at the beginning? They talk about the early films of Raj Kapoor and Dilip Kumar, who was Mohan in the 1948 version of Mela. They talk about how the story then was that happiness was very difficult, was not possible even in the new nation. And that's why in Mela, both Nargis and Dilip Kumar, they sacrificed their happiness in favor of family and tradition, and they only find happiness in the afterlife. Now, Raja Dayaksha finds this in several films, especially in the other films of Raj Kapoor. And you know, this is in the morning after partition. This is understandable as national ideology. Like, do work for the nation, rebuild the nation after it's been ripped apart by however many hundred years of colonialism and by this partition, broken India into India and Pakistan. Dedication to tradition will see us through. Even if your individual, your subjective happiness, you won't have a happy ending. Right? Now, in the 1971 version of Mela, tradition is somehow frozen. The loss of memory meant that Krishna has been ripped out of the village. And sure, he's gone to university, but he's kind of forgotten the village. He's forgotten his origins. Wasn't his fault, but he did. And the land that should be inherited by him is now disputed because someone in the village government, the panchayat, the village elders tried to profit from it, and the Robin Hood gangster character, the Dakot, the bandit, is preventing anyone in the village from exploiting that land, but he's using the illegal means of being a bandit to do good, to help the temple and so on. University-educated Kanhaiya, I'm calling him Kishanya, but his name is Kanhaiya, comes to farm that broken village and to restore India with modern agricultural technique, but also by way of marrying the girl of the village, right, the traditional village daughter. And in that process reconciles with his separated brother, although his brother must die. They reconcile at the end. And so many Bollywood films had this story of brothers who are separated for 20 years or so on and come back together in some kind of resolution. In fact, the period between the 60s and the 80s, nearly every film had something like that structure. And they overcome class prejudices and so on. So the secret politics of Mela is that in 71, and secret politics is Ashish Nandi's phrase. So thinking about those film theorists that I mentioned at the start. The secret politics of Mela 2000 is more like the tradition-modernity difference has been displaced. The village and the family romance is still there, but it's not rescued by the soldier. The soldier is killed by the bandits because they're global terrorists, they're Muslim terrorists, and so on. And instead, a kind of substitute pair, a replacement for Ram and his offsider, come and they lower working class, and they're dedicated workers. They're just trying to survive in modern India, but they have some values that protect the girl, for starters. She's on the run, and then they kind of become like Rambo characters. They fight against all the odds, and basically they're being promised treasure if they win by the girl. She's lying, of course, but they still do defeat the terrorists, and of course get the girl. And the other brother gets a Shaurya Rai. She drops out of the ceiling into just a magical moment. Commercial opportunism is manipulated. Right? The market is manipulated to make these two workers who don't realize they are, or they don't identify with tradition. It folds them back into a version of tradition. The village, the nationalist village, though, now. Unfortunately, this film, where is it, Mela 2000, was the flop of the three. Right? It was a box office disaster. I mean, lots of people saw it, and it was on TV, and it still is on, regularly shown New Year and things like that. But it wasn't as successful as the other two, despite having, you know, famous actors and so on. Amir Khan, Twinkle Khanna, Faisal Khan, right? The others were huge hits, and for sure, Dilip Kumar and Nargis superstars, and so on. But very interesting to see how the idea of ideal India and the Mela, the festival, and the village transform. One where you're dedicated to tradition and the nation, and happiness isn't part of it. Another where by mixing tradition, fixing tradition with science, you can get happiness, because they do end up, well, even one brother dies, but they do end up happy ever after. And in the third one, army tradition, Ram dies, but the replacement, a working class guy and his offsider, they manage to live happily ever after when they integrate the global economy into the village. Right? The global economy is they will make money out of whatever they can, but only when they come back into the village do they find integration and happiness. So each of these films do have a message which we can examine and interpret and show. But we need to have an anthropology of the village and of the festival, of the symbolism that's continuous through these different versions of Mela, to really grasp and understand that. I mean, I have more I want to say about these things, but I'm not going to rabbit on all day about it. I feel like I've said too much already. I'll stop the recording and we can have discussion.